So today I'm gonna go really retro. We're gonna be talking about a movie that I rewatched recently, a Charlie Chaplin movie from 1925, The Gold Rush. Okay, The Gold Rush is a classic, of course, classic Charlie Chaplin movie. So you got this guy who's the tramp, obviously played by Charles Chaplin, who's just walking around like everybody else, trying to find warmth in the icy mountains of wherever the hell they are. He encounters like some other dude. There's a dude called Big Jim who's actually found a bunch of gold on the mountain and he's kept it secret and he's just looking for a shelter as well. Somehow he ends up shacking up with the tramp and some guy who's like wanted. There's some dude, some creepy dude with a beard who looks like freaking Bryan Cranston, who is wanted by the cops for something really bad. They end up in his barn that he has, and he wants to get rid of them, but eventually he freaking just gives up. Like he just like accepts them, especially because Big Jim gets the better of him. Because he's not, but you can't mess with Big Jim too much. He is called Big Jim because he's big. All right, so Big Jim gets his hands on the gun and everything. So yeah, so they end up kind of like being sort of like friends, kinda, until at one point they kind of draw like the short straw to see who's gonna go out and try and find some food. And the wanted man goes, okay, and he doesn't come back because he manages to find Big Jim's mountain. He finds Big Jim's mountain, but he also finds death because he got greedy. He tried to take the gold and get away, but he got freaking, the authorities were there and he collapses down the freaking mountain. Spoilers, by the way. Big spoilers for The Gold Rush from 1925. So then you spend the rest of the movie kind of like with the tramp and Big Jim kind of sharing the barn and really struggling to have anything to eat, which leads to some really funny slapstick and shenanigans, such as Big Jim kind of picturing Charlie Chaplin as a freaking giant chicken, which is funny as hell. You've got the tramp kind of like cooking his own shoes in one of the most classic parts of this movie, with the laces, like eating the laces like spaghetti, and then just eating the shoe itself, sharing it with Big Jim, like cleaning the little nails and everything in it. So good. Like, it's just genius. Like, this movie is genius the whole way. It's not as... I find that this movie is not as gimmicky as something like Modern Times. Like, it doesn't go really all out. I feel like this movie has a smaller budget than Modern Times, but, like, this movie is still, like, really, really good. There's some really good slapstick in this movie. Like, Charlie Chaplin is really... He did everything in this movie. Like, he... As usual, he stars in it, makes the music for it. He freaking like wrote it, edited it, directed it. He did everything in this movie. Just phenomenal stuff. Really, really funny as well. Like, it holds up as a funny, kind of sweet, strangely sweet movie. There's parts in this movie that are genuinely hilarious. There's parts that are like really sad and touching. Like there's a whole part in this movie where the tramp ends up in some bar, okay, where this girl works there. The girl is played by Georgia Hale, who is really, really good in this movie. Really good. Like, she conveys emotion like super well. And considering this is a silent movie, you've got the this big obstruction of not being able to say anything. So she conveys emotion, like subtle emotions, really, really well. She never feels like over the top. She feels like really real. And I really appreciate her in that movie. She's one of the best, I think, like leading ladies in all of Charlie Chaplin's films, really. Anyway, he falls in love with this woman, and he kind of gets treated like shit, like by her, but her friends as well. And like, she is with some guy. Like, when you first see her, she's with this guy, and she's kind of playing hard to get, but she loves this guy. But then the tramp shows up and she kind of uses him to make the guy jealous, which is kind of shitty for pretty much all involved. And she also like makes a date with him to like bring her friends to like his barn, his little house for New Year's. This is a great New Year's movie, by the way. Definitely. Like in the New Year's movie lists, this should be in there, along with When Harry Met Sally and others. Okay, this is a good New Year's movie. It's got the right amount of kind of like it's not Christmas spirit, but it's like this kind of like the bittersweetness that you get from New Year's themed movies. And anyway, and then you can see that she realizes that she did something wrong. Like she realizes that she feels bad. She really feels bad about what she did to that guy, and maybe there's more to it. They don't go too deeply into it, like the kind of romance side of it. Like we don't really know if she actually likes him or not. Like through most of the movie, you don't really know at all. And they answer that at the end of the movie, like right at the end, because what happens is spoilers is the tramp kind of helps out Big Jim. Okay, Big Jim loses his memory. Every so often in a Charlie Chaplin movie, there's something that happens where you're like, why did that happen? Anyway, so Big Jim loses his memory, can't remember where the mountain is, but he remembers the barn where they spent all this time together. So he's like, hey, I'll just get the tramp to show me where the barn is, and from there I can probably find the mountain and I can share the fortune with him. And you believe him because these two have shared a lot in this movie. Big Jim and the tramp have shared a lot of time together. They are friends, but they lose touch. And it is kind of genuinely sweet that Big Jim actually meant that. He actually shares the wealth with the tramp. And you don't expect that. You think the tramp's going to get screwed over again. But no, Big Jim is a man of his word. He's a very likable character in this movie. You think he's like... What's interesting about this movie is 1925, right? He's portrayed as this kind of like goofy, kind of big dude, like how villains were portrayed, right? In movies at the time, like cartoon villains a little bit, like Bluto. He's kind of like Bluto, right? In Popeye, or like that mustache dude in every Laurel and Hardy movie, a little bit. He's got that same vibe, but he's not a villain at all. Like he is actually a good guy, and the actual villain, who is that bearded guy, the Bryan Cranston looking guy, that dude is not really portrayed as like your usual villain. Like he's just kind of like this sinister dude, but he's not over the top cartoonish, And I really appreciate the kind of subtleties of this movie, the approach to like all these characters. They're just like they're archetypes in some ways, but they're not just full on cartoons all the time. And I Charlie Chaplin really bringing some depth to something that could have just been some goofy ass nonsense. And basically what happens is Big Jim and the tramp become millionaires. Okay, and they find themselves on this boat. They're kind of sailing away. They want to do a photo shoot because they're going to talk about his amazing story, the amazing story of how the tramp became this millionaire. So then he puts on his old tramp clothes, right? And then he clumsily falls into a bunch of ropes, and he meets the girl who was there on the boat. And she thinks that he's a stowaway, and like the cop is gonna find him. So she tries to help him out, and eventually, like he gets caught by the cop, and she still tries to help him out. And that's when I think, in a very, very subtle way, it's actually way more subtle than you think. In a very subtle way, the tramp knows at this moment that she genuinely cared about him. And the understated way that this is done, I had to rewatch the ending again just to kind of get it, because it happened so fast at the end that you're like, wait, like, because they kiss at the end, right? And you're like, I was like, I don't know, I feel like that was too fast. But no, because you can see, if you look at Charlie Chaplin's performance when she's trying to save him on the boat, you can see the subtlety of his performance. You see that the tramp understands that she actually does really care deeply about him. Otherwise, why would she give a shit? Like they weren't actually like full on friends. They weren't like lovers or anything. She could have just been like, "Oh, hey, how's it going?" And just like didn't care that much. But in that moment, he understands. I think they both understand something very important, that they love each other, and it ends with a kiss. And the way the kiss is done is actually very good, very genuine. Just a great movie. I don't have any complaints about this movie. It does everything right. It's an awesome Charlie Chaplin film. It's one of the best, honestly. I like this movie more than I do City Lights or The Kid, or The Great Dictator. For me, it's right up there with Modern Times as one of Charlie Chaplin's very best movies. You got to check out this movie. I know it's a silent movie. I know it's in black and white. I know it's very old. You got no dialogues. You got the freaking title cards and the piano music playing. But trust me on this. It's a really good movie. You'll appreciate it if you just sit down. Just let the movie take you. Okay? Great movie. Just phenomenal film. Definitely check it out. It was a pleasure. I'd seen this movie a few times before, but it was a pleasure to rewatch it. I noticed so many more things than I did early on watching this movie. The very first scene where you see all these dudes like walking in the snow is insane. I never realized how ridiculous that scene is. It's this shot that's like comparable to something like Aguirre by Werner Herzog, where it's just like there's like hundreds of people, hundreds of extras just walking in the snow in this mountain. It looks insane. But the scale, the sheer scale of it, that is nuts, nuts. Beautifully made movie. It's a must. Sorry, if you like cinema, you gotta watch it. I will see you guys later in the next review. Take care, everyone.